In 2015, 21 transgender women of color were murdered. Of the 21 victims, 17 were women of color. While this large number of tragedies is shocking, the media's framing, or lack thereof, are even more so. A Washington headline post read, "Was the victim in brutal Fresno killing a transgender woman? We may never know," as a way to convey the murder of a transgender woman. A majority of the coverage of these tragedies was reported by activist blogs and websites such as BuzzFeed, Activists, and other feminist and LGBT activist websites. However, it is a disservice of local news stations and newspapers to choose not to report these tragedies, as the deaths of these transgender women brings to light a very prevalent problem in today's society: the violence against transgender women, especially transgender women of color. The framing, or lack thereof, by the media of a large number of deaths of transgender women influences the violence against them. In 2011, the National LGBT Task Force report found that 50% of transgender participants experienced harassment in the workplace. 44% of transgender participants who experienced harassment were Black, and 14% of that harassment was physical. 28% of participants have experienced harassment while in a medical setting. 2% of this harassment was physical, and from this number, 6% of the physical harassment experience was experienced by Black transgender individuals. 19% of participants have experienced domestic violence at the hands of a family member. From this number, 35% of those participants were Black transgender individuals. 53% of participants have experienced verbal harassment or disrespect while in a public place. 53% of these participants were Black transgender individuals. 8% have experienced physical harassment while in a public place, and from this number, 22% were Black. 22% of the participants have experienced harassment from the hands of the police. From this number, 38% were Black. Violence is everywhere for transgender individuals. Media coverage of the murders of Black transgender women and transgender women of color would force the conversation to be focused on the violence against them. This is an issue that needs to be addressed, and the media, be it the news or social media, has a responsibility to bring awareness to the violence and ultimately the deaths, hopefully with the overall goal to stop the violence